Okay, thanks, Janelle. So I'm just going to dive right in and share my screen here. As more people come on in, that's totally awesome.
Sorry, I'll get off of there, Denise. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Not really enlarged right now. I'm just trying to get to presenter view here.
There you go.
Oh, there it goes. Okay. Okay, so hello, everyone. And as Janelle said, welcome to Managing Challenging Behaviors. So my name's Denise. A little bit about me. I am the mom of 5 kiddos, ranging from age 13 right down to 3 years old. So I totally get the whole span of kiddos that you may have in your homes. I taught school for several years. I've been a behavior specialist for 6 years. I've worked in this field in general since I was 19 years old in a variety of different settings. So I've worked with kids in schools, group homes, on a consultative basis. So when I'm not a behavior specialist at ABC, I am in private practice as a registered provisional psychologist. Christine?
All right. Denise, it looks like you have a few downloads in the screen there. Are you able to exit out of that so we can see all the little pieces of the slides or not quite?
Yeah.
Awesome.
There we go.
Sorry, being nitpicky. I am Christine. I'm a mom of 1, a very rambunctious 7-year-old. Keeps me on my toes. I've been working in the field since 2010. I have an early learning and child development supervisor with diploma certification, as well as a BA in majoring in psychology and sociology. And I have worked from infant rooms to all sorts of age groups, including different varieties of family situations, some with children's services, some women's shelters, all over the place. I've been very blessed to get such a variety in my background. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so what is challenging behavior? So challenging behavior with this age group can occur in many ways. We can see it in the form of aggression. So that would include things like biting, hitting, throwing, not listening to directions or defiance, being withdrawn or, being shy to the point where you can't get your child to do anything or cooperate, being clingy, not wanting to go to sleep, and temper tantrums. Okay, so does this look familiar? I'm sure all of you have experienced this to one extent or the other, where you have your child completely sprawled off on the floor and they are not agreeing to do anything. So before we move on, you can either type in the chat box or unmute yourselves and just give us some feedback on how are you currently managing challenging behavior.
Not anything in the chat box yet.
Nothing in the chat box?
Nothing. Sorry, Denise, you want us to talk about how we currently manage?
Yeah.
Honestly?
For me, I just learned how sometimes to ignore it and ignore it to some degree, and then just I don't know for other kids, but my daughter just if I squeeze her or give her a hug or redirect her, then that would be perfect. If she didn't cooperate with me, then I use the quiet time. That's for me.
Okay, that sounds like you have some good tools to start with in your in your toolbox, the ignoring or planned ignoring.
Yeah.
That's good too, keeping your kids safe. And it just lets them know that in the moment, I'm not going to engage with you when you're that dysregulated. And we'll
Yeah.
talk more about that as we go on.
Yes, it took me lots of time to learn how to ignore and not to be uh, angry and what
Mhm.
is it's hard.
Yes, it is hard.
Yeah.
I completely agree. It can be very hard. That is correct. Thank you for sharing. And
Thank you.
anybody else? Anybody else?
Getting a lot of quiet time in the chat box here. And
Okay.
quiet space, a calm down bag.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Michelle's saying it's very important to say, like, look at my face. That made me sad. You can try this instead. Choosing your battles.
Yes. Picking your battles is a good one. Yeah. So Christine said a lot of people utilize quiet space, giving them space.
Yeah, some people are saying that they do default to yelling sometimes, or yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Melinda Stevens. I have two kids in my care. What do you do when those, like Ryder, for example, he wakes up some nights and he just throws the whole place upside down because he has those really bad tantrums when he wakes up in the nighttime. He tips chairs over, anything that's in his way is gone.
Okay. So he wakes up having temper tantrums in the middle of the night?
Oh, it doesn't matter. It could be 2, 3 times a night. He screams unbearable, like really, really bad. He bang things, he hits stuff, and chairs, tables, whatever, he just throws. Whatever he can get his hands on to tip over.
Okay. Thank you for asking that question. We're going to address that question. That'll be the first thing we address in our question answer period, and it might be answered as we go along.
Okay, then.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Say that, Christine?
Are you making a list then of the questions, or do you want me to? Okay.
I have a piece of paper beside me here that I'm jotting down as we go along.
Yeah.
Okay, so why does challenging behavior occur? So challenging behavior will typically occur when the child has lack of skills in an area. They don't have the ability to communicate a need or a want. A want has been denied, lack of sleep, they're hungry, a change in routine, or an inconsistent routine. So as challenging as these behaviors are, the first thing that we got to remember is that it's communication. They are trying to tell us something, especially if we have a child that has a speech delay or a developmental delay and are not meeting their milestones quite on par. That's their way they're going to communicate, whether it's appropriate or not. All behavior is a form of communication, and that's where we, as the parent, caregiver, guardian, it's our job to help them figure out what they're trying to communicate. So we got to do some detective work. Okay, so before we get further into the challenging behaviors, and we are going to focus on temper tantrums today, we want to know, or we're going to communicate, what's the difference between a temper tantrum versus a meltdown. They look very similar, but they are two very distinct different things. And I just added this infographic because I really liked it. It was pretty cute because we've all seen this kind of temper tantrum. Okay, so temper tantrum versus meltdown. A temper tantrum has a purpose behind it. The child has a goal in mind, and typically a temper tantrum will end once the child receives what it is that they are seeking. Whereas with a meltdown, it's typically a response to something, And a meltdown will typically end once there's been a change in a sensory input. And when Christine and I were going through the slides today, she had a really good example of a teddy bear.
Mhm.
Christine, would you like to share that example?
So maybe your kiddos have like a favorite item, and like it could be like a teddy bear or a blanket or a soother or a bottle or something. There's a favorite item, and for whatever reason they can't find it, or you're saying no to having it at that moment. Maybe they have to do something first before they get that. Well, yeah, what if you need them to go to the bathroom and you need to hold the teddy bear so the teddy bear doesn't get dirty while you're helping them with the bathrooming, and then you give them the teddy bear, problem solved. Well, they were just having a temper tantrum. But in the other side, in the meltdown category, you give them the teddy bear and all of a sudden the teddy bear's not working. The item they wanted is now no longer the item that's going to solve their problem. They've gone to a place that needs a lot more than just a teddy bear. It needs you. So those are kind of like the differences between them. Temper tantrum, get the teddy bear, it stops. Meltdown, get the teddy bear, it's still going.
So basically, with a meltdown, the child basically becomes unresponsive, because we've had those moments where you've tried everything with the child. You've tried singing, you've tried giving them their toy, you've tried giving them some food, and then all of a sudden they just pass out from exhaustion. That would be a good example of a meltdown, because in that instance, the sensory input was, I'm so tired, I'm now going to sleep. Whereas with the temper tantrum, depending on the child, they can communicate what they want. And despite you saying, no, you're not going to have this, they're just amping it up. They're frustrated. They're doing whatever they can to achieve whatever that goal is, whether it's to stay up later, get that cookie, not eat the broccoli on their plate. There is a goal in mind when it comes to a temper tantrum. Okay, so now we're going to get into the nitty gritty of it. Strategies for managing those temper tantrums. We have all had this happen to some extent. You've broken a cookie in half, a piece of cheese in half, and our child has lost all their marbles. Whereas we as adults were like, are you kidding me right now? It's a piece of cheese. For a child, that piece of cheese was their whole world, and now it's in 2 pieces. Okay, Christine?
So it's really important to remember, like, challenging behavior is not about you as a parent. It's about the child's response. They're trying to avoid a situation or a task. There's a denial of something that they just want so badly. Like, it could be just the cheese, and they just want that cheese so badly as one piece, and it's no longer one piece. It's denied. It's not that one piece anymore. It could be attention or connection where they are whipping around the room and they're going, mommy, look, mommy, mommy, mommy. And you're trying so hard to finish a conversation on a Zoom call, for example, but they want your attention. It could be a sensory input thing where they just don't know why they're feeling this way, or they need something to feel better. This could be included in sleeping and eating, because those are such big parts of how we regulate our sensory input system. It ranges a lot with that kind of stuff.
Ready for the next slide?
Yeah, sorry, I got distracted by the admit thing.
Okay.
Zoom. Yeah, I am ready for the next one. So this is just a nice little graphic of a reflective tool for yourself, because it is a two-way street. It's not just their behavior and it's their fault. It's the situation between you and that child in that moment. Us being the caregivers, we have the ability to use all of our brain, and we need to make sure that we are keeping ourselves in check and going, why is this particular behavior bothersome to me? And it can make a lot of really harsh thoughts, like, are you a good parent? Is this what I really want to do? Is this something that I just can't control? it can go into a really big negative place, but it's a really good place to learn that there's always growth and skills to be learned. And that's why we're all kind of here today, is to kind of learn, what is it that I can do better? Because we take the responsibility as a partner in these situations. It's not just a child, it's not just you. It is a relationship that we need to work on regardless of the time and the task at hand. We are working together with that child in those moments. So you can take a little brief read through of those, or I can read through it if you guys like. I don't know what the consensus is here.
I think with this graphic, Christine, I think the one that stands out to me of all the points on there is their big reactions trigger your own anxiety or trauma or stress levels or whatever it may be.
Right. I'm looking at the triggers your shame and guilt one. That one stood out most to me when I was looking at it, because I thought about my son and all the times that I've gone to a grocery store and he's screaming and I'm still shopping, and we're the classic meltdown in the public places. And you have to work through that shame and guilt in those moments. And remember, it's not anyone's shame or guilt. This is your child having a big moment, and you get to work through it with them, regardless of the place it is.
Can I comment on one of these, Christine? And
who's that?
It's Michelle. Hello.
Go ahead, Michelle.
For me, the one that stands out the most is you didn't realize the behavior was their way of communicating. I think oftentimes we forget that behavior is communication and that there's always a reason behind the behavior. Sometimes it is impossible for us to recognize what that reason is. Like the breaking the piece of cheese in half. It's like, WTF. But yeah, it's important to remember that all behavior is communication. And I think it becomes really frustrating sometimes when kids are having meltdowns over things that seem totally asinine. And then you have to just remind yourself that there's a solid reason for that to be happening.
And that goes back to what Denise said at the beginning of us being detectives, right? Because it is a two-way street. Like, we need to make sure we're understanding what is their communication telling us right now, and what message am I not understanding?
And sometimes it's just taking that deep breath together, and we'll get to that.
Exactly.
Okay, so upstairs brain, downstairs brain, otherwise known as little brain, big brain. All these terms come from Dr. Dan Siegel and his book, The Whole Brain Child. So when you hear downstairs brain or little brain, that is your emotional brain. The downstairs part of our brain, that's the basic automatic portions of our brain. That's what regulates our breathing, our blinking, things that we do day to day that don't, require too much effort on our parts, just things that we do naturally, and our emotions. When we talk about upstairs brain, big brain, that's the more complex part of our brain. It's the part of our brain that manages our thoughts, our beliefs, our problem solving, cognitive processing, our ability to, practice self-control, empathy, those kinds of things, which will tie into the next slide. So one of our team members sent me this infographic the other day, and I really loved it. So I'm sharing it with you. It says, it can be really tough to remember how emotionally immature children are, because they can be so impressively intelligent, capable, and aware. When they seem deliberately bratty or downright mean, we'll need to remind ourselves these are tiny people with incredibly low impulse control who are very easily overwhelmed. In the moment, it may feel like our kids are out to get us, but it is actually that their impulses have gotten the better of them. So 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 4-year-olds, even if you have a 13-year-old, children live in their emotional brain. It's how they function. Any little thing that happens, whether it's a big thing or a little thing, how easily do they immediately start crying, or they run away from the situation, or you see them walking along, someplace that they shouldn't, on top of the countertops, kitchen table, wherever. That's their impulses. When you are in that emotional brain, when kids are in that emotional brain, there is no logic. Just like when you break the cheese in half, there is no logic. So when we're having that temper tantrum, and even when they are having that meltdown, either or, they are in an emotional state, they're in that emotional brain. So in those moments, that's where we have to connect with them emotionally. Like when mom said she gives her child a hug or gives her a tight squeeze, because we need to calm them down. When they are in that emotional brain, they essentially are in fight or flight mode. They don't know what to do with themselves. And that's where we as adults need to calm them back down by giving them that hug or giving them that space, depending on, your child. Giving them a quiet space to calm down, that works too. It's important to know that when kids are in their emotional brain, they are not processing what you are saying. So saying to them, why are you crying? You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. They are not processing. All you can say to them in that moment is, I see you are really upset. I'll give you a hug to help calm you down. Or let's take some deep breaths. You're really wanting to build that emotional vocabulary with them in the moment to help them calm down. Children are a reflection of us. So if they're screaming and yelling and we respond in the same moment, we are matching their regulation. So in order to bring your child's regulation down, you have to be calm at all times. Of course, easier said than done. It's difficult, but that's when you got to look at yourself and say, okay, they're having a meltdown. Calm yourself first before you can deal with your child. They're very emotionally immature. That's that's the number one thing that you got to remember. I'm thinking of my littlest. He had a completely ridiculous meltdown, temper tantrum over something. And my first instinct was to be like, just stop, losing your marbles. Like, I've had enough. But then I recognized that, okay, I got to be calm before he can be calm. So I just took him by the hand and said, I can see you're upset. I know you're frustrated, but throwing things do not change the situation. And with that, he started to calm down. I met him at eye level. I kept my voice calm and even, and we were able to move on. Needless to say, I had to do that 3 or 4 times again later throughout the day, but each time, as long as I kept myself calm, he was able to be better, respond better to what I was trying to redirect him to. Okay, Christine, I think I overlapped you there.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So in the behavior world or psychology world, we have these 3 R's, and some of you may be aware of them, but I think it's really easy as a parent even. I never go to myself, regulate, relate, reason. I never say that to myself. I kind of actually say stop, drop, and roll. These are kind of like my 3 go-tos when things have hit the fan and I am trying to help my child, whatever child that may be. It could be my own or it could be a child I'm working with. And sometimes even with adults, they need this processing as well, right? Especially in these times. So even though it says the 3 R's, you can remember it as stop, drop, and roll. So like Denise was saying, we have these should moments, and it's just like, oh, they should stop crying and just put on the shoes. Like, we just need to go. Just put the shoes on. It's the very obvious thing. Just put the shoes on. That's the simplest way to solve this issue. But they're not going to stop. If they're already tantruming or having a meltdown or just completely unregulated or dysregulated, they're not going to be able to put those shoes on. As simple as that task may be, they were not going to hear what you're saying. And saying shoulds at them is not going to help. Asking them, why are you doing this? Why? Stop feeling that way. You got to stop this, is also going to stop them from understanding the feelings they're having and really loses those connection moments and is most likely going to make whatever the situation is a whole lot worse. So we need to stop whatever we're doing or thinking, and then we need to drop down to their level. Sometimes kids don't respond so well when you drop. So I put in brackets on this slide, maybe bringing them up to you. So it might be picking up little Johnny and holding them and saying, I'm here, right? But more or less, we typically drop to their level. We've stopped what we're thinking we're doing. We're dropping to their level. And that's when we're going to start that regulation piece. The regulation piece is where we're just going to roll with whatever cues our kiddos are giving us. Maybe they squeeze our hand a little tighter. We can squeeze their hand back. Maybe they need a tighter hug, or maybe they need just something really quick to eat. Maybe they've been hungry for a little while and they just lost their cookies because they've been hungry for too long. It's a very basic need, but it's something that can bleed and pop up any moment, right? Maybe they just really want to have that affirmation that I'm here and I love you. I'm completely present in this moment with you. And sometimes they just need you to be there and be silent. You have to roll with whatever your kiddo is telling you, through the things that you as their caregiver, the parent, whatever that looks like, know this child. You know from this child what kind of things are going to help them bring them back to that centering, back to that calm. And that's the regulation piece, where you're actually co-regulating with them and knowing that you're guiding them through this process of coming from way up here and coming back to center. And that's when you can say, when they're coming back to their center, like, you were so mad. It's so important to label, not go, why were you so mad? But say, yeah, that was a mad feeling. We as our profession, we have the benefits of visuals, but some kiddos out there really, really identify well with visuals. And if you can show them something that says, like, you know, you were mad, that helps them to kind of see, oh yeah, like a reflective moment. But that labeling is such a big piece, right? And you say, I'm here for you. I am here for whatever you need in this moment. But like, also when they get to that place, that's when they are now using their whole brain. So it's no longer just the base brain of the emotions and all this, but you're actually putting everything back together, and you can actually talk to your child if they're at that level and say, can I help you put your shoes on? You were so mad. Can I help you? And see what happens from there. It's never going to be a cookie cutter fit for going through what your child is experiencing. It may be a go-to to give them something like a tight hug, but then the next time that they go through this big emotional breakdown, it may be something totally different. They may want that little teddy bear. They may want that blanket. They may need just a cookie or something just to get them through. But remembering for yourself that you as the adult need to stop, drop, and roll. This is an emergency for that child. You need to stop what you're doing, drop to their level, and roll with whatever's happening for them in order to bring them back to a normal state, or a regulated state, a calm state. They don't have the same functioning brains as adults, and they're still learning with your support and with your love how to continue learning about themselves and communicate their needs. So that slide, I would say, is pretty much done, Denise. We can move to the next one.
Okay.
On our next slide, this is where I really, really like this visual, because it goes back to what we were talking about before, where you have these moments on yourself of going, like, I feel very guilty about this. I feel shameful about that. Or I maybe could have done this better. You know, knowing that it's a two-way street. This visual is really, really helpful because it just pops into those quick moments for yourself when you're addressing an emergency for your child who's dysregulated. Yeah, like, we're not going to yell over them. That's not going to help the situation. We're not going to reason with them when they're completely losing their cookies over the fact that they aren't putting their shoes on. We're going to get down to their levels. This is a very, very nice graphic for do's and don'ts. I don't know if anybody's feeling something pop at them that they'd like to say, or like to share about, or have a question about any of these little button points on here, like decreasing stimulation. That might be like turning off the lights, or maybe they don't want a hug from you right now and they just want you sitting next to them, right? Anybody want to share, even in the chat?
I would say out of that list, Christine, use a distraction can do wonders. So, like, to go back to your shoe example, your kids aren't wanting to put their shoes on. It can be something as silly as, putting their shoe on your head or trying to put on their jacket, because they're easily distractible at this age. Using a distraction is something I use quite often with my youngest. I also wanted to highlight that avoiding saying no. The word no can trigger a tantrum. And then you're like, oh no, here we go again. So if you rephrase no, you can say maybe later, or I'll think about it, or we'll see. That way you're still in control of that activity not happening at that moment, but we're not using the trigger word of saying no. Change it up. So I don't always say no all the time. I always say, okay, maybe later, or I'll think about it, or after supper, we'll try again, or something like that.
I really like how you talked about putting the shoe on your head, because I think it's really easy as adults to forget how our little kiddos are learning through play. And if you are going to play with them to get them to do a routine like putting on your shoes, guess what? They're going to learn how to put on their shoes, even if they're going to be silly about it. But at least you've met your goal of getting those shoes on those feet so you can get going. Play, connect, be there, be present. 100%. I love that.
I see Mara from our team has joined us and she has raised her hand. Go ahead, Mara.
Didn't know we had raise hand feature.
Yeah, I just wanted to share something in relation to avoid saying no. Something that we like doing in the classroom that would also help validate feelings and do the avoid saying no part is what we call we can language. So when a child does something and it's not exactly what we want, we help redirect them by using a we can statement. So they're throwing stuff in the classroom, we'll let them do it, but in a different way. So we'll tell them, oh, I see you want to throw something. We can throw or toss a bean bag into the bin. So if they need that movement, if they need a certain action to express themselves, we're not denying them of it. We're just giving them a safer way to do it.
Thank you for sharing that, Mara. That's a really good example. Anything else you want to add, Christine? I was just going to speak to the don't yell over a screaming child. It would be silly of me to sit here and say that I have never yelled over my own screaming child. That's a complete falsehood because I have done it. That's my disclaimer. But in those moments where I have done it, that's where I've recognized, oh, I'm not regulated. And that's when I actually come back to my kiddo and say, you know what, bud? And this is like, I'm using my 12-year-old as an example. I'd be like, you know what, bud? That wasn't okay for mom to do that. Mom had a bad day. You didn't deserve that. I will try to do better next time. With my 3-year-old, I would say, oh, mommy shouldn't have lost her temper. I'm sorry. That wasn't fair to you. And it lets the child know that, hey, my mom is human. She loses her marbles occasionally too. Were you going to add something, Christine?
Oh, sorry. I have family members in my household right now trying to get stuff from the office, so it's a little distracting. But I was just thinking about how I was sharing with you prior to the presentation about this last summer where I took my 7-year-old hiking on a mountain. And when we got done hiking on the mountain, he was so exhausted. So that physicality piece, he was so exhausted that at the end of the mountain and at the bottom, he just wanted to find a bathroom to go pee. And we're in like a public kind of setting where people can hear us and see us. And he's screaming his head off, and he's not screaming any words per se, except for like bathroom. And I'm there in that moment wanting to just yell back, like, I'm trying to get you to the bathroom. It's a very simple thing. Like, you need to go. I'm trying to take you there. It's very logical. But for him in that moment, I had to get down on the sidewalk with him and say, yes, I hear you. I'm with you. Do you need a hug? I'm here. And eventually about 5 minutes later, he calmed down enough that we could actually go find a bathroom. But man, oh man, in that moment, I wanted to yell. I wanted to just pick him up and get going, find a bathroom, because it was such a simple moment that was quite triggering for me. But it's very easy to feel like yelling is going to solve the problem, but that's us needing to recognize that we need to take a second, take a step back, and stop and drop what we're doing and roll with whatever's happening for them, right?
Yes, totally. Okay. I think this is you to continue here, Christine.
Yeah,
Things to remember.
Oh, what?
Key things to remember. Go ahead.
Yes. So being consistent. It's really important. If you have more adults in the household, like we'll say like the regular one of the mom and dad scenario, if dad's going to be getting down and putting on those shoes, but mom is standing there trying to get child to start doing shoes, that child's getting two different messages. We need consistency. They need a consistent message, no matter what it looks like. Maybe it's at bedtime that you get one book and then you get a hug goodnight and a kiss on the forehead, and then we're leaving. We're not coming back unless you're hurt or you're scared. Then that's a consistent message. But you, as like your families or whatever it looks like, need to have a consistent message for this child to learn. And it has to be presented in a way that everyone's on the same page. Yeah, we need to address what we're seeing. So like I said before on the other slides, like, yeah, you were really mad over your shoes. You were really mad, because that's going to help them in the future say, I'm mad, I need help. If we don't help them label that vocabulary now, in those moments that they're having the hardest times, it's not going to cue their brains later as to what happens next. I'm mad, I can do this. I can ask for help. It's very, very important to address those and say like, yeah, those shoes, they're not the most comfortable. Maybe we can look at getting some new ones later, or talk about options or whatever it is, right? And this one's really important. When we're addressing these things, we're not asking them why. We're not saying, why are you so frustrated, or why are you so mad? Unless they're at a much, much more regulated level. Like with an older child who's like 8 or 9, you can go through that process of regulating, stop, drop, and roll with it, and then go, why were you feeling so mad? And help them reflect. But with our little guys, we're not asking why. We're not going back, and that's kind of almost a shaming process for them. Like they shouldn't be feeling these emotions, but we can't ever tell anybody that they can't feel the emotions that they feel. We need to validate those emotions no matter what they look like, and work through those emotions with them. The little guys, they just need us to say, I'm worried that you're gonna get cold feet if you don't put your shoes on. It's not, why aren't you just putting your shoes on? It's gonna cause a lot more problems if you question how they're feeling. I'm sure we as adults don't like it when people say, why don't you just calm down? Because I'm sure that works for everyone here, right? Like if someone tells you to just calm down, like I know it's never works for me. But then we also have to have the consequences match the actions. So we're not saying to our kiddos that you're behaving this way while I'm dropping you off at school. Denise and I were talking about this, where it's very, very tempting, especially when you have a situation with like daycare or out of school care or whatever it is, to say to your kid, you were yelling at me this morning, so now you don't get this when you come home from school or whatever. But that's not very connecting consequences. They have to be immediate and relatable, especially when they're this young. So with this example with the shoes, if they're not putting on their shoes and you have a safe environment for them to step outside and see that it's wet out there or that it's cold, let them have that natural consequence. It's a learning opportunity. You're not going to go all the way down the block. That kiddo's going to touch that cold cement or whatever it is and go, ugh, I don't like this. And 9 times out of 10, they're just going to put on their shoes. But having consequences that are immediate and relatable are going to be the best way for learning to occur in situations. I know, Denise, you had a really good example earlier. Do you want to share that on the consequences?
Oh, I can't remember what what consequence I shared earlier. So like when it comes to consequences and when we're addressing what we're seeing and building emotional vocabulary, that's also a time where you as a parent can give your expectations. So a good one is my 3-year-old wanted more veggie chips one day. The bowl was empty. I had said, no, Brecken, you cannot have any more veggie chips. His response was then to scream at me and throw the bowl. So I picked up the bowl, put it on the counter, said, I can see that you're mad. You don't like that I said you can't have more veggie chips. But throwing the bowl is not going to change my answer. We don't throw things when we're frustrated. He screamed at me again. So I took I took him to our stairs and said, okay, I can see you're mad. You need to sit here and calm down. So I sat him there, and I personally don't put times on my timeouts. I sat him down and I just said, you come back and see me when you are calm. So I'm putting the responsibility on him. That strategy, you have to know your child best. Some kids, you have to sit with them when it's timeout. Other kids, they're capable of sitting. Depending on the day, most days my 3-year-old is capable of sitting. If your child is not, that's where you may have to sit with them and show them a timer on your phone that counts down, okay, we're going to watch the clock. I'm setting the timer for 2 minutes. When the timer rings, we're going to continue on with our day. That behavior is not okay. There's no point in rehashing the infraction throughout the day. It's not going to help things, and it can potentially re-trigger a whole new temper tantrum situation, depending on the kiddo.
I like how you also said, like, it's not going to help to bring it up throughout the day, because it's so tempting to be like, oh my God, Johnny's just been doing this all day long. I am so frustrated. And that's the point where we need to identify what's triggering us. We need to go back and find a way to calm ourselves down, whatever that looks like for ourselves, be it breathing actions or some form of self-care. But we need to keep ourselves in check, because those kiddos rely on us to help them learn.
Mm-hmm. And something else we were saying when we were reviewing is that we want to make sure the consequence matches the action. And if the consequence is going to be more work on you as the parent, then it does not match the action. So saying that, I'm going to take away, all your stories at bedtime. Your child loves that story. So maybe it's to meet them halfway in the middle. So if it's usually 2 stories at bedtime, then maybe it's only 1 story and you explain why. If you're saying you're going to sit in timeout, make sure it's a reasonable timeout. The rule of thumb typically is 1 minute per age. So if you're 3 years old, then it's 3 minutes. If you're 5 years old, it's 5 minutes, and so on.
Yeah.
Okay, so you will be sent a list of resources later. With the resource list that will be sent to you later has all the infographics and these things that I have listed here. So earlier I mentioned the book, The Whole Brain Child by Daniel Siegel. He goes through a lot of the stuff that we talked about today. I love to use books, whether I'm at ABC Head Start or a private practice. There is so much stuff that can be learned from books. So a really good book is Sam's Pet Temper. And it's just about a little boy whose temper gets really out of control and he has to learn how to tame it. Another good book is How Do Dinosaurs Say I'm Mad? Julia Cook is an awesome author. So when it comes to temper tantrums, her book on that is Soda Pop Head, and it talks about a little boy who loses his marbles at everything. So when you're reading these books with your child, talk with them about the story. So if it's 3 or 4 years old, you can always say to your child, oh, wow, that kid threw that ball across the room and it hit the teacher. Is that what you do when you're mad? And your child will most likely say, no, that's not good, right? So have those conversations at your child's level about what the characters are doing in the book. The most learning is done when your child is calm and regulated, such as during story time. Then there's a website called the Institute for Child Psychology. They have several online courses for parents, caregivers, whatever your status is with the little one in your life. And I just pulled some of the titles that looked really interesting from the a parental guardian aspect. And that's Understanding the Sensitive Child, Childhood Anger, Working Through Tempers, Decoding Preschoolers, and Managing Parental Stress are just some of the coursework that they have on their website. Okay, and now for the fun part of the presentation, questions. Okay, so I know one parent asked earlier, she has a little guy that's waking up in the middle of the night, just throwing things, screaming. So my first question is he fully awake? And does this behavior occur at the same time every single night? Is that parent still here?
I think we forgot to unmute.
Oh,
Do you hear me?
yeah, now I can hear you.
Found it. Sometimes I wonders if he's awake or not. If he's fully awake, sometimes I wonders. But sometimes it can happen 2 and 3 times a night.
Okay. What I suggest starting with that particular behavior is start tracking the time
Okay.
that is happening. Because if it's happening at the same time every night, so let's say it's happening at 1:30, 3 o'clock, and 4:15 consistently, that falls into a group of sleep issues called night terrors. And the way we break behaviors for night terrors is if you know that at 1:15, and I know it's going to be a pain on you, but if you know at 1:15 he's always going to wake up, you'd want to wake him just a little bit just to break that sleep cycle.
Oh, okay then. Oh,
Yeah.
no.
But that's also dependent on if you have a consistent bedtime routine.
Yeah.
You have to be putting the child to bed at the same time every single night. And this should be for every child, regardless of their sleep patterns. There should be a predictability for sleep schedule.
I have them on a schedule for between 7 and 8 every night they go to bed.
Okay.
Okay. I would start with tracking how often these behaviors are occurring, like the specific time of night.
Yeah.
Because that's sounding to me like a night terror, because you also said, I wonder if he's fully awake. Because how long does it last?
Oh, God. Sometimes it could last up to an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my neighbor actually called me the other night and said, is everything okay? And I said, he's having a bad night. And he come down, he said, oh my God, he was tipping chairs and everything over. He just absolutely, there's nothing that can stay anywhere. It's all gone off the counters, tables, whatever.
Right. Okay. And if you say his name, does he respond to you at all?
No, you get mad and he'll pitch into me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I would definitely say like also track the number of times and talk to your doctor, like the pediatrician, about it as well. I know it is a go-to, like if you had a bad night one night, then you go to bed half an hour earlier than next night, just because if they are sleepwalking or there's night terrors, the doctor may be saying that they need a little extra sleep because they're going to have less of that time in the REM cycle, like the deepest rejuvenating cycles.
Well, I don't think they really sleep. They only sleep an hour to 2 hours and they're up, and then I'll make them go back to bed, and then they're up again, probably another hour later. They do not sleep.
So they're not sustaining their sleep throughout the night.
No, they do not. They do not sleep during the night. Absolutely not. Doesn't matter what time I put them to bed. They're still up.
Yeah.
I would definitely talk to your pediatrician.
Well, if I could, it'd be great, but I can't get to see him. I've been waiting for a year almost.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So my appointments keep getting changed, so I'm just waiting on a call back.
Right.
Oh.
Right. I think in this case, the best thing you can do when we have that kind of behavior is to try and minimize whatever's in the room so that he can't tip and throw things and put himself in you or himself in danger.
You only see my house when I go to bed. There's nothing around that he can tip because it's all moved.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think as best as you can would be to just monitor him, and if you can guide him back to his bed and lay him down, maybe pat his back, do some of that co-regulation if he's willing to respond to it, to see if you can resettle him.
He doesn't like being touched when he wakes up, when he's having those, he does not want you to touch him.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I would start with tracking how often per night these behaviors and the time.
Yeah, I will.
The time, because probably something to do with the sleep cycle.
I had melatonin and that doesn't even help. No, that's pretty bad. That don't even help.
Okay. Yeah, this is definitely where hopefully you can get into see your doctor soon, because this is definitely an issue for the doctor to get him in for a sleep study for sure.
Yeah, that's a great idea, actually. I'll
Yeah.
probably go down tomorrow and see if I can get him to send me in for a sleep thing. That's a
Yeah.
great,
I would suggest asking for a sleep study. Yeah.
yeah, actually, that's a great idea. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
I was just gonna say, I just invited everybody else to either type in a question or you can go ahead and unmute yourselves.
I just want to share something helped me with the bad voice and screaming. Lately, I made a chart, and I started each time my daughter scream or had a bad voice. We don't put a star, and then we put a star when she use her nice voice, and then 10 stars a day she gets something she like surprise egg or whatever she wants. It didn't work from first time, but now it's like 10 times, and it worked well with her.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, this age group really responds well to reward systems, and reward systems can work really well as long as you're consistent.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
You've been really consistent with it, which is good.
Yeah, that's right. My question is, you remember this sensory things you talked about, the blanket and the bear and things like that? My daughter, instead of having something can calm her, her sensory thing is me. So she just hold my ear when she feels angry, or when she's sad, or when she wants to sleep. She needs to hold my ear all the time. And if I'm not at the home, she will scream and cry. And like now, every 10-15 minutes, she just say, "Mommy, where are you?" If I'm in the bathroom or out, she want to be sure that I'm around, so I can't go anywhere without her. Even when I take a bath, she want to sit beside the door and wait for me. So what I understand from the specialized services I have, that her sensory thing is me.
Okay.
So my question, if I want to go, like, I don't know, if I have a doctor appointment, if I want to go to, is it okay leaving her scream like that? Or what I should do just to make her understand that it's okay, mommy will leave for 10 minutes or for 1 hour, but she will be back.
It's so hard to say in these times, because if she's lost her daycare or school network, or even like being able to go to family functions, she, like every child right now, is experiencing loss and grief of social connections, just like we are as adults. And you being what sounds like her primary caregiver, she could be emulating those feelings of please don't leave me a lot more right now because of what's going on, and not understanding why she's not seeing everyone she gets to normally see. There's so many different factors with clingy kind of behaviors. But we also have to be so sensitive right now. Like if your child is experiencing that grief and that loss of social networks, it's a matter of like trying to figure out what's going to be best for her in this moment without traumatizing her.
Okay, so giving her something she like before I go. I till
Like,
now
It could be
she's
like
now
a
almost.
picture of you. It could be maybe like a t-shirt that you wore the day before so she can smell you, or
yeah, that's what I
it
was
could
gonna say.
be drawing a heart on her hand saying, anytime you touch this heart, I know that you're touching it and I can feel your love. It really depends on where your kiddo's at, but it sounds like she's not wanting you to go because you're her connector point and the person that helps her the most right now. And a lot of
Yeah.
our you're in this vulnerable place right now
Yeah.
because of what's going
Yeah,
on.
she's almost 4, and till now, when we need to go out, I need to sneak out. Not she can't see me in front of her eyes open the door and going out.
And that could be a lot worse in the long run for her if you're sneaking away
Right.
without telling her
Do is
and giving her
prepare
that
her.
I will come back when this timer is done, or
Mhm.
when you're done your nap, I'm going to be back. Like giving her a when is going to give her a lot more security than you just magically vanishing.
Okay, so I have to stop sneaking out.
Yeah, that just
Okay.
more distressed. It would actually to be prepare her ahead of time. So
Okay.
you don't want to wreck bedtime, but let's say you have an appointment tomorrow, then in the morning, you'd explain to her, okay, hon, mommy has an appointment. I will be back, in an hour. So and so is going to stay with you. Give her that transition object that Christine talked about, whether it's a special teddy bear or you draw a special picture on her hand, and it's to let her know that mommy will come back, but I have to go do this first. So it's letting them know, yeah, mommy's going to go for a little bit, but she is going to come back. It's going to be hard at first.
Yeah.
They will adjust.
Thank you so much.
Consistency piece. You need to give that information, and she needs to see that follow through that you've come back in the time frame or the way that you said you would. You're giving them that partnership, that connection, that respect of what.
Yeah. Thank you.
No
You're
problem.
welcome. Any other questions?
I'm just going to jump in to say that I'm going to stop recording now. But absolutely, we will stay on the call and keep going with these questions. I'm just going to stop recording.
Thank you, Janelle.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us and for watching the recording.